We are live for another author interview. This time we have Edward Martin III. I cannot read the author, filmmaker, troublemaker. I mean, hey, the best ones are, right?
I think so.
There's usually some shenanigans with top talent, right? So, it comes at a price. So, feel free to introduce yourself to the would-be crowd, I guess. But the floor is yours. Just tell a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do, and feel free to go as long as you like. There's no rush, no time limit. Floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Josiah, and thank you so much for having me on. That's just really kind of you. So my name is Edward. I'm a writer, a filmmaker. I do other strange things too, but those are the two biggies. I've had 2 novels published. I've published 4 books on my own. Working on a book series now. I've made 4 feature films, maybe 30 or 40 short films, 6 or 7 web series with a total of about, I don't know, like maybe 300 episodes, give or take a bit. Just very aggressive at trying to constantly write and make stuff.
Nice.
The stuff I write kind of varies a bit, so it is mostly horror, but it's a little action, and sometimes it's a little odd and strange too. I wrote, for example, a book on advice for werewolves, and it was in the form of like some sort of dipping into the mentality. So it's like, okay, this is a book for werewolves by werewolves, and it's meant to be advice from one werewolf to another, and think about your question or think about your thing and whatever it's puzzling you, and then open the book at random and read a page. So it's sort of almost a odd little kind of like divination for werewolves. And then I got a wild hair and I wrote an app for that as well. So you can ask your phone for werewolf advice, and it just gives you some random piece of werewolf advice from the phone.
Oh, man.
Things like keep your fur clean, and if it doesn't smell right, it isn't right. Things like that. My cousins, who I rarely talked with, but they eventually wrote back and they told me, like, this is like chicken soup for the werewolf soul. Like, okay, I'll take it. That's and that's also kind of part of a thing we're sort of trying to sketch out, which is sort of like a variety show for werewolves. I don't know. I get a wild hair on things. So like for a few years, it was all Lovecraft stuff.
Right.
I loved working with, sort of the mythos directly and then indirectly to mythos-like stuff. And I still kind of do some of that. And then, okay, so for a while, we're not doing that. Now we're doing zombies. Why are we doing zombies? I don't know. That's just the thing. Right. I'm feeling it. And so zombies are sort of quieted down, and we're right in a sort of a mental crest of like dark fantasy, kind of city fantasy, things like that. So stuff that's going on around cities and towns and things like that.
Gotcha.
And I can already feel that that's gonna, once I get this one particular series out, what's coming up already behind that is some werewolf stuff. Like, sure, right. Okay, yeah.
I mean, hey,
nice. I'm very glad that I'm in a situation where I can sort of follow that, whatever feels like a good thing to sniff after, and I can follow it, and I'm not as worried about paying the bills because I have a day job. So thankfully, as many writers have to do, have a day job, and that kind of covers the bills, and that gives you a chance to explore things you want to explore rather than necessarily having to go, okay, what's the market right now? What's the market doing? I got to adjust. I got to adapt. I got to do this thing. I got to run this ad, and I got to do that, and home 9 yards.
Right. Okay.
It is.
So we're just Seems like we got some action in the chat for the first time,
Oh yeah,
right?
I can't see the chat window from here. I think. Oh wait, no, it says hide chat. Show chat.
Yeah, so you can unhide it. Yeah, so you
Huh.
should be able to see like anybody that comes into the chat room and stuff like that.
Oh, I was in full screen. I think it was hiding that.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, yeah, I see the chat window now. Oh, hey, if someone's on, it's great.
Right? Yeah, I mean, even one person is on, that's fantastic.
That's one person I'd love to talk to.
Right. All right, so let's get to the well, I've already answered the first question by just, talking about, what you do as a filmmaker and things of that nature. You say you have 4 novels published on your own. So what inspired your first novel? Like what was the thing that got you into writing in the first place? Or
Ah,
making, whichever one you want to talk about.
I'm happy to. Oh my gosh, pull my string. I will just talk. So getting to the novels, actually sort of, so I was writing first and it kind of started nudging into screenwriting because I enjoyed that. And I had writing some scripts for some short things, written some scripts for some features, kind of tried to nudge a little bit, I'm like, oh, won a few competitions here and there, sort of placed. And then I got into a situation and, oh my God, this is such a bad habit. I don't know if it's a good habit or bad habit. I think it's a bad habit. If
Right.
someone tells me like, I don't think that's possible. I don't think you're going to be able to do that. I will be the guy that says like, okay, I think I can do it just out of spite.
Right.
And that's has weirdly gotten me through a bunch of projects. Like, oh yeah, well, the hell with my private life, I'll do this thing. And so you end up doing the thing. But with the I had written a script, and I really liked this
Right.
script. It was a ton of people, a ton of crazy monsters, a ton of just high paced, actiony stuff, and a number of folks had told me like, I don't get it. It's not. Maybe only a couple of people, maybe just one monster. Like, oh my God, we've seen that movie before. But then I thought, I don't know if anyone's ever going to read this script or watch the movie that this script comes from, but I know this. I bet you I can write this. I bet you I can. And so that's how I ended up with that first novel. It's like I wrote that based on this script. And it had a ton of people and a ton of creatures and a ton of action and all kinds of jumping all over. And I was able to do things in a novel I could not do in a movie, or maybe not as easily. Odd sort of mental flashbacks, what's going on in people's minds and all this other stuff. So I had a great time at that. Like, whoa, I had forgotten how much fun I have writing.
Right.
And then I found a publisher. My publisher for that book was Black Bedsheet Books.
Right.
Down out of Sacramento, California, or near Sacramento. I'm blanking on the exact city, but it's really close to Sacramento.
Right.
And then he told me, like, you got another novel into you? And I said, well, actually, yes, I do. So I wrote a second one, and he just published that this summer.
Okay. So we got someone in the chat, Ara, says, give us some of the character names and plot points.
All right. Well, we'll go. Well, I happen to have. So we'll go with the Violet Furnace. That was a novel that was just published. Okay. So I'm going to try to remember. Oh, Bobby. Okay, because she was based on an acquaintance of mine. So the main character in there is Bobby. Bobby is a helicopter pilot, but she's not like a fancy flyer. She's sort of she kind of trashed herself a bit over the years, and so that's all she knows. She does she's like a second string pilot in a tiny little, not even a community you'd call it, like a little town, a little city. It is not in the U.S. mainland. I didn't specify where it was, but it is a place where a lot of health and safety laws don't apply because some of the folks there are making all kinds of crazy rules and constructions, trying to make it out, trying to figure out how to build things where they don't have to worry about safety. So Bobby and a couple of other folks get stuck on a building, and something's growing from the vents on the top of the building, and so we're gonna have to tell someone in this building about this. It's sort of a half-built hospital, but it's under construction too. We're just gonna go down and tell them you got some weird crap growing on your roof. Before we take off again, you better clean this off, because the next time we come back, you want this clear. And it turns out it's very toxic, and it messes with you instantly, and then they end up kind of being chased. So this stuff is now growing down into the building and kind of working its way down through the floors, and they're being chased all the way down to the basement. And then at a certain point, the building, which has sort of security features, the security system gets triggered. And that is just one of those situations where you get someone on the phone and you're trying to explain what's going on, and they're not understanding what you're saying. They want to get out of the conversation. It becomes a mess. And
Right.
you really just want to no, I need you to understand this. And they're understanding another thing, and they're distracted, or they're grumpy, or whatever. And so they activate the building security features, which then starts autoclaving everything, moving back up. So now they have to go back up through the building, but now they got to make sort of suits out of plastic that they've put together, painter plastic, and just shoving their way through this really gross stuff that's been growing up as they were coming down, and it's just filling the building like foam.
Yeah, okay.
So I wanted to make something really glushy.
Got you.
So see that. So there was a helicopter pilot, Bobby, and then Glenn was the name of her EMT. She keeps an EMT. Well, not keeps an EMT, but she has a rat named Percy. I had to have a pet. Sorry, I don't have a rat myself, but I've known many people who have rats. My pets are vaguely more traditional, but so she's sort of inspired to keep this rat because of so many of my friends that have rats. And
Gotcha.
They're awesome. They're smart, but they have such a tiny little lifespan. I'm like, what are we to them? We must be like some crazy ancient mountainous creature. Because rats are like, yeah, they're going to be there for a while, and then they're going to be dead. And like, oh, this guy that I've been living with, he's unending, generations. Right. So had to have a rat, and then doctor goes with them. They catch up with the doctor really quickly, and so she sort of cottons on to what's going on too, and that's Catalina. So the three of them just they have this adventure, and it's crazy and suffocating and hot. There's one moment where it's a weird, it's just a panic, and it's a horrifying scene. I jotted it down when I sent in some notes, where they think they've come across some survivors, but they're not survivors. They're people they've died, and they've been essentially kind of fossilized by this fungus, so that they look like people, but they're not. They're just like puffballs.
Right.
And they vaguely have like this sort of sense of they can move and they can kind of talk, and then at a certain point they like, oh, we're gonna wash this stuff off your face, and that's what they're made out of. And so then they start screaming, and it's this horrific moment where everyone's screaming. And so one character gets sick, and they don't want to get out of there. Like I said, remember, glushy. I wanted to get glushy, so they're encased in these makeshift suits, and the one guy gets sick. He just so freaked out, he starts vomiting, and so one of the characters are like grabbing his sort of mask and holding it sideways, and just throw up down your suit, because you cannot break the seal on this. It was so gross. I had to do that.
Right. Okay.
Because you think the question you had asked me earlier, like, what's the most, I don't know if it was over the top or it was like outrageous or crazy scene. And it's probably not the most outrageous or crazy scene, but it was the one that disturbed me the most when I wrote it.
Right.
The idea that you're going to help someone, and all of a sudden, instead of helping them, you realize that, oh, no, they've been dead. I don't even know how long they've been dead, but what I'm helping now is not them, and it's horrific and terrifying.
Oh, okay, got you. Like helping a zombie or something like that, right?
Yeah, without realizing that's what you're doing.
Oh, man. All right. So
I'm seeing. I'm not.
what's
Oh, there's. Oh, I see the notes. Oh my gosh, there they are. Okay.
yeah. So what's the most difficult thing about being a writer slash filmmaker, in your opinion?
So we're in a weird place um, in sort of the history of writing. Um, sorry, what genre is this? It sounds cartoonish or anime. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. You're right. Josiah is right. It's horror with a little bit of sci-fi mixed in. So we're in a strange place where anybody who can publish something can do so. And I think that that's great because there's so many voices out there that have previously been sort of blocked out by publishers. Like, oh, we're not looking for this kind of story or that kind of story. And for a period of time, I was working at a publisher where we were basically told from the, like we're publishing a certain kind of a thing and we're not looking at anything else. And then even at a certain point, I was told as a submissions editor, you're not ever going to see anything that comes over the transom that looks good. So your job is to politely and courteously reject everything, and anything that's good is going to come through other channels. But we're in a place now where
That's
anybody who, huh?
that's interesting.
Oh my God, it
You
was
said
so.
you're never gonna see anything good, so your job is just to reject everything. Anything good is gonna come through other channels. That's
It
interesting.
was it was so demoralizing. It really was. But now we're in a situation where anybody can kind of publish anything, and you could, right before you could like use photocopies and stuff like that. I did mini comics and things like that. But to like do a book and have it out on Amazon, anyone can do it, and that's a really cool thing because you're going to hear from people you would never have heard from before, and that in some ways kind of bypasses. Well, it certainly does. It sort of bypasses the traditional publisher model.
Right.
So that's good. Traditional publishers still there, and you're doing like a ton of other work. Even with traditional publishers, you're having to still do that stuff. So that's a very difficult thing, and it's made harder because on the other end, a lot of times you'll hear from people who they watch movies, they like them, they read books, they like them, but there's a sort of running sense of like, but you should just be doing that for free. I've had discussions with people, I use the term loosely, where I found one or more of my films out on YouTube. Someone had just posted it, and it's like, hey, come on. I mean, I'm nobody, right? And if even 1/10 of the people who have watched this bought a DVD for me, I could do this on my own.
Right.
And the argument back was, I don't see what I was just so worried about. We're watching your movie. That's all you should enjoy.
Right.
So that can be, I mean, okay, awesome. Yes. And that part of what helps me make more movies or write more books, or for anyone else here writing movies or making movies or writing books, what helps is not being, give us a chance or give them a chance to make that. So the way to get around that is you have to go into things that we didn't have to do before, like ad campaigns and strategic publications and things like that. So what can get very frustrating is that a person who just wanted to write, and I'm not even necessarily including myself because I have a somewhat analytical mind and a little bit of a business sense, but you get some kid that wants to write a story or publish a book, and it's just going to get lost. Hey, it's great that we can publish it, and they're just going to get lost, or they're going to get overwhelmed by a bunch of people who decided that today is the day they're going to be a jerk to this kid.
Right.
And everybody is into this performative negation, and like, who can be more creative in breaking down this author or this filmmaker or this person, or if there's someone out there who wants to publish a book with 10 poems in it, they should be able to, of course. But it's so much harder because there's an environment of you're still not worth paying attention to your it's self-published as an example.
Right.
Or like, I don't know how to handle the ads. Well, if you're not willing to do the ads, you're not really willing to put in the work. You're not really willing to be a good author. Like, oh wow, this is nuts. So we've switched from having one sort of gatekeeper, the publishers, to an oddly completely different kind of gatekeeper, the sort of the marketing and respect level.
Yeah.
And that just breaks my heart, knowing that there are people who really want to write, who really want to share their stories or share stories that they're making up, or their own stories. And no matter which way they go, they keep hitting walls.
Right. I got you.
The walls change and shift, but it's very frustrating. And not a lot of them are going to have, the kind of the perseverance or the advantages or the sort of the buffer, right? I can have a bit of a buffer because I have a day job, but not everyone has that.
Right.
So it's not quite as like bad for me, but it is bad for writers.
Got you. Yeah, that can be very difficult, just no matter which route you go, there's always a gatekeeper, whether it's a traditional publisher or just the overall connotation behind self-publishing, being the author that can also do it all, from graphic design to creating ads to, advertising your book on Kindle Unlimited or whatever publishing platform that you decide to publish on. And is like what happened to the author that can just keep the main thing, which is writing.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand that. So all right, so what's one thing about being a writer or filmmaker that drives you up the wall? Like when you're in the process, you're just like, oh boy, why?
You've got me curious here, because I just come up with an answer for that real quick. So I want to cheat. You had one drives you up a wall. Oh yeah, okay. That's so the easy one. Let me share. Oh yeah, good. I was able to restore you. Never having enough time. And I think this is gonna. So there's two pieces to. I mean, never having enough time sounds really straightforward and sort of simple, but there's actually two pieces to it. One is, for those of us who want to write, for those of us who want to create, our society doesn't really support that enough to give us that time. I'm fortunate, but a ton of people aren't. So not having enough time, you have to, you got to go work, or you got to do this. So many countries, so many other places offer opportunities to, like, if you want to be a artist in resident, or if you want to be a writer in resident, or, you get a, not scholarship, but like a scholarship or a grant for doing this for a year or 2 years. How many people could that benefit? To have society, it's like, say, in the US, to say, like, here it is, here's the deal. As from almost like from a federal level, because we recognize that writers make the world better. Well, I mean, depending on who you ask, but art makes the world better. We know this. This is a fact.
Right.
So, as from that level, here's a bunch of living grants, or here's a place. So if you want to write, and we have someone like judging you to a certain degree, like, yeah, this person looks like they have a lot of promise, what they need is a year or two, then we have a location and we're happy to take you there. If you don't have to worry about family, which, some people do, and I get that, then here's a retreat area where you can go, a community where you're just writing. We're taking care of everything else. So there's food and places to sleep, and it's safe. We just want you to write. Whatever your voice is, your crazy, weird, bizarre, lovely, fantastic voice. Our group has looked at it and said, we need more of that.
Right.
So that's that aspect. The more the sort of raw time, and then the other pieces, I can't still my brain enough. So a lot of people have these to be read piles of books where they're like, the stack just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And then, oh yeah, so there's my immediate to be read books on the nightstand. And there's my to be read eventually books over there by the fireplace. And like there's stacks and stacks of to be reads. I have to be writtens.
Okay.
So I mean, my current count is something on the order of 300 or so that
Right.
I track. I just keep a spreadsheet open constantly, or either on my phone, I connect to it or whatever. So if something comes up, I jot it down. And whenever I'm at a gap, which is really rare, I look through there and like, oh yeah, all these things were vetted by a past Edward. So they're at least marginally interesting for me to write. But there's no way. I don't have the lifespan, even if I was working nonstop, even if I wasn't sleeping, I don't have the throughput to be able to handle everything I want to write. So that's just sort of the two pieces.
Right.
The need, the amount of time that a person has in their life and the amount of time that we allow people to write. And I think both of those, running into those conflicts, that drives me right up a wall. It's like, how can a brain conceive of all these things that it wants to create, but it can't because it doesn't have the time. There's just no organic amount of time. And how is it that we can have a society that allegedly values art so much, but isn't willing to cut a little slack?
Right. Okay, I got you. Yeah, I get that. I totally get that. You gotta work to eat, but at the same time, you don't have enough time to really do what you want to do.
Yeah. I have a friend who is a terrific photographer, and I'm undercutting, or I'm not even telling like the half of it. She's a brilliant photographer, and she decided that she loved icebergs. And so she started taking photos of icebergs, and she went to parts of Norway and took iceberg photos and just having a great time. Clearly, this was her thing. She was enjoying this a lot. And she was contacted by someone in the local government and said, you know what, we would love to have someone who lived here for a period of time, like a year or so, and just photographed our icebergs. What an amazing thing. And they gave her an apartment, they food and board, and her job for a year was do amazing photographs of icebergs.
Right.
And that was her job. And they liked it so much. They kept asking, like, do you so the year's up. Do you want to keep doing this? And she goes, oh my God, I'm loving it. If you're liking my work, I'm good to go.
Right.
And so that's her job.
Right.
Nice. I don't even know. Do we have anything like that in the U.S.? I mean,
right. We probably do, but you have to look for it.
Yeah,
really look for it.
And I'd be fine with that, right? Because I think, and very much so, writing and writers, publishing, and all this stuff, rising tide lifts all ships. And like, we're never a competition with each other. I want every other writer I talk to, I want you to succeed.
Right.
We all have our different audiences. We all have our different people that we like and that like our work, and maybe they'll like someone else's work. I'm not worried. It beggars the imagination that someone's going to say, "Oh, Edward, I really like your work, but I really like this other guy's work even better, so I'm going to stop reading your work."
No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I want that other guy to succeed. I want that girl to succeed. I want that kid who's writing poetry that's based on the monster under their bed. I want them to succeed.
Right.
This doesn't hurt any of us. So if there is such a grant program or writing internship or something like that in here in the States or where we can reach, and if there was a central clearinghouse for that kind of a thing that we could all share, fantastic. That would be great.
Right. Okay. All right. So we're just about to wrap up the interview. But before we go, one last, kind of question. So, all right, what's the most, recent novel series that you've written? And, just go into it for the people that might be interested in your work and, want to read it. And, so just take this opportunity to promote yourself and, just let the world know what you write,
I am so glad you asked because I just got a hard copy of it the other day. Okay, so I also write short stories too, and this is an anthology. It just was published Friday. It's called Bestiary of Blood.
Oh, okay, that's a nice cover.
Oh my God, this is a gorgeous book.
Right.
It's edited by Jamal Hodge, who is a friend of mine. He's also an editor, an award-winning filmmaker, and just a terrific guy. And this is a collection of like 37 authors in this book. It's nuts, and they're all fables featuring animals and exploring sort of the relationship between animals and humans. In some cases, just the animals among animals. I wrote a story for him that was it was a fable, right? So every fable has a moral. But I wrote this story about a spider who was like she's looking forward to being the best mom possible, the best mother she could be. And spiders don't really survive that long because once the eggs are born, it's bad news for the mom. So they'll be around there. They'll take care of the egg sac. But once the egg sac is born, the little spiders, they're going to eat the mom. That's what they do. So this whole story was sort of from her point of view about how she just wants to be the best mother. And then ultimately, even as they're eating her, she's, it's a bad time for her, but her take on it is still, but I'm being the best mom I can. And and that was like her last thoughts. I really liked the idea that, you're always trying to tell yourself, I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm trying to do the best I can. And then this is this amount of sacrifice that's just a level that we rarely encounter. So Jamal liked the story so much that he asked me to write a second one that was about dogs.
Right.
And that the premise of that was that three dogs meet in a sort of timeless space, a liminal space where they're regathering to review the history of dogs and humans.
Right.
How are humans worth, is it worth us being domesticated? Well, we've given, and it's a weird timeless thing. So it jumps all around in time. I try not to like nail it down, but so one of them is sort of takes the place, they're three dogs. They're clearly friends. And they're equals, but they sort of, for the purpose of this last like little bit of a court, one is taking the position pro-human, one is taking the position humans failed, and the other one is sort of taking a position of being the judge. And so they're each presenting their evidence, and I make it sound very dry. It is not,
right?
Because the dogs sort of travel back through time in different areas of time and space, where dogs are being treated well. And then where dogs are not being treated well, and trying to decide, has humanity succeeded at being worth subjugating ourselves to, or have they failed?
Right.
So he liked that enough. And I reread that this morning. I had forgotten some of the emotional parts, and it kind of wrecked me as I read it. So
okay.
I think I did okay. But if you get a chance, it just came out. It's called Bestiary of Blood. It's these are short stories, but they're short stories from a ton of fabulous authors. And Jamal put together a great combo of people. If you're not into horror, if you're like, I don't know if I'm really into this or not, but I want to like try a book that's just a ton of really great authors, then Bestiary of Blood is a great way to start. So if that was what you were thinking, or
yeah. I mean, just tell a little bit about, like the work, and people are interested, and then they'll kind of find you and read your work, and maybe you might get some new subscribers, new audience members, and stuff like that. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, people who are interested in my work, I'm always happy to find more. I'm on like Blue Sky and Threads and Instagram. I think you and I met on Instagram.
Yeah.
And even on Facebook, usually you can find it all looking up Edward Martin III.
Right.
And Amazon profile and things like that. And anyone who's interested. I mean, I would love to hear from you. Happy to share stuff. I maintain a website at hellbendermedia.com.
Gotcha.
And there's all kinds of stuff I give away for free on that site too, stories and things like that. I see you have Patreon. Same with me. I've got a Patreon that I give away more stories and videos and things like that.
Right.
So that is always, it's always a pleasure to talk to other writers, to talk to readers, to find out, what people like, and gosh,
Right.
that connection is always valuable. Yes, it's true that any writer would be perfectly happy, mostly, I think, just writing and publishing books or whatever, having a great time. But if even just one person writes and says like, oh my God, I read this story, it's great. Or I read this book, I love this book. I tell you, that can lift a person for like a month.
Right. All right. So that will conclude this interview. So I'd like to thank you for coming on and, just having a conversation,
Oh,
just,
Josiah, thank you so much for
getting
having me.
on. And, I'd like to thank the one person that, commented in the chat and gave some interaction.
Thank you, Ara.
You're a trooper. And, we will see you guys next week for another interview. And, I still don't know if this is a podcast or just me doing interviews, but, it is what it is for now. We'll keep doing it and, just see where it takes us.
Sounds great.
Till next week, guys. See you on the flip side.
See you guys later.